Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our first ever VFEAT application webinar. What we're going to do is go over a little bit about the grant and then walk you through the steps required to do an application. VFEAT this year is extremely exciting. We have more money than we have ever had before. In the previous 3 cycles, we have had $6.5 million that we have given out to fire departments across the state. This year, we have got $10 million that we are dividing equally among the grand divisions. One of the best things about this is there is no local match required. So this is all free money. Pardon me, I'm still admitting people into the meeting. Okay, the grant cycle this time, the grants were available starting November 1st. The deadline is noon on Thursday, November 30th. We're using a new system this year. It's called Smart Simple. It is a computerized system, and it is a firm cutoff at noon on that Thursday. So please don't wait until the last minute. We also will not be answering questions about the system after Tuesday before the grant is due on Thursday. So please familiarize yourself with the process so that you have your application in plenty of time. Okay, we are going to walk through the registration process as if you have never done this before, which honestly, nobody has. This is a new system. I've had a lot of people that thought that they had the same login for this that they do for FDTN or for INFRS. That is not accurate. It is a completely different system, and you will have to register the first time you use it. And if multiple people from your department are working on an application, they will each need to register. Me. Share my screen. Okay. We're going to do it from the beginning. If you want to see what all the State Fire Marshal's office has to offer, you go to our webpage. On that, about halfway down, there is a section for fire departments. The bottom section of that is grant opportunities. If you click on grant opportunities, it will take you in to a section that has federal, state, and other grants. Under state grants, there are several things listed. This is the application rules and guidelines. There's a blank W-9 form. There is a step-by-step registration guide that you can print out or pull up that will show you exactly how to do this process. And there is this link that if you click on it, takes you in to the Smart Simple page. At this point, to register, you will click here to begin. And what we're going to do this with one of our program developers, Zora, walking me through the application so you hear step by step exactly what you need to do this process. Zora?
All right, Michelle, are you still sharing your screen?
Can you not see the screen?
No.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, let me.
Now we can see your screen. Wonderful.
Okay. Can you still see it?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. You click here to register.
So from this page, there are two types of ways to register. One, if you identify as a non-governmental or non-for-profit, then you click the first link that will take you to look up your organization if it already exists. So we'll go ahead and take this path in. So the next step from this page is if you're not sure whether your organization, your department exists, uh, start typing your organization name into the organization name text field. So if that comes up back as no records are found, that means that your department or organization hasn't been registered yet. So what you can do then is click here to add it. And this routes you now to a new page that captures some basic level information about your organization.
I am using a career fire department since they are not somebody that would be applying to this as an example. When you click the volunteer fire department, it prompts you to put in the FDID. Since we're doing a nonprofit, it's not a government entity. So you would click no, and you would put in your address. And if you have done it before, it will pull up things at random. It wants to auto prompt to complete your thing. For an email, I've made up an email at random. You will need to put an email that you have access to. And then for entity type, you have to click what type of entity you are. And we will come back. Kimberly will explain how to get your Edison supplier ID in just a moment. Whoever is using the system would need to put their title, and you have to click that you are not a robot. And that completes the registration, and you click to return to your main login page.
If you identify as a as a government user registration, once you click here, you will pick the second choice. And similarly, if you already exist, if your organization exists in the system, you can start typing in the name. And if it finds you, then it'll populate with that information. If it's not found, then you can click here to add your organization's profile. And then proceed to submit the form. And an email with an activation link will be sent to the email address you registered with.
An email here prompts us. We have a username. Click, and it asks for an email password.
So now that you've completed the registration stages, your account is successfully created, but there is still another step to activating your organization profile. On this page, you'll see a red text that highlights that you're required to update your organization profile. So go ahead then and click on the organization profile. And there are some prompts that will follow in order to activate our account. The first one is under the contact information tab where it says remittance address. Here is some text that instructs you to click on the copy address above button, which will pull down the information from your physical address, which you added during registration, and populate it into the remittance address area. It won't effectively refresh immediately, so you need to click edit at the top left corner of the page. Now we can proceed to complete the rest of the fields on the organization profile as required. Oh, Michelle, you're mute.
I'm sorry. The authorized representative will be whoever is authorized to sign your grant application. You click Save. Anytime that there is something that needs to be done that you failed to do, it will prompt you with this red error message at the top, and there is a link. You can click on this and it will take you to what needs to be completed. On this, the confirmation needs to be checked that you certify that all attachments are current and up to date. I have not submitted a W-9 form, so I can't submit that yet. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our finance specialist, Kim Whaley, who will explain to you how to do your W-9 and to get your Edison supplier ID.
Hey, Michelle,
Yes.
just a quick question before we go on into that. Earlier, we had tried just looking online and we typed in our fire department ID number that we had, but it wasn't showing up under anything. We are a volunteer fire organization. So have you seen that before where we would have an FDID but still not be identified?
Yes, this is not tied to your FDID. Everybody has to register initially.
Okay. But under that, I know when we were talking about the initial registration, you would put your FDID in. So if it doesn't populate, we would just go in with new and just type that number in.
Correct. You would just complete the form like everything wasn't there initially.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Alfred.
Actually, we just asked the question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Kimberly?
All right. Thanks, everybody. So yes, I'm going to show you your W-9 form and walk you through and give you some tips and tricks to successfully complete this. I will state this is a federal document and there are very strict guidelines that we have to follow when we submit them for approval. So please be sure to follow all of these as closely as possible to ensure that your W-9 can be accepted. And then I will talk about supplier IDs, Edison IDs, when I finish talking about the W-9. So each year you are required to submit a W-9, even if you've been awarded a grant in the past. If you apply next year, we will ask you to resubmit a W-9 so that we can ensure that your information stays accurate and up to date. So I know many times it does not change, but that is just to ensure your payment goes to the correct address and all the associated information stays current. So I am going to share my screen. And I believe, Michelle, you sent out a new W-9 and pointed to where the most current version is. So that is one of the first requirements, is making sure that you're completing the current W-9. I know many people have copies. We need to make sure that we're completing the October 2018, which is the most recent update from the federal government. So there are many boxes on here and you actually will only complete a few of them. So I'm going to specifically tell you which ones to complete and which ones to leave blank. So in box 1, you are going to put the name of the fire department, or if you are associated with a city or town and they are going to be receiving your funds, that's whose information would be on the W-9. So this is all about who is going to take receipt of the funds. In box 2, you're actually going to leave that blank. Most likely you were not a DBA. So just leave box 2 empty. Box 3 is super important. You have to tell us what your federal tax classification is. And you will only check one box within box 3. So you are never going to be an individual or sole proprietor. If you are incorporated in some capacity, you will need to check with whoever is preparing your financial information and handles that for you. They should be able to assist you with determining which type of corporation you possibly are. Our team cannot really assist with that because we do not know what you are classified at a federal level. The good news is most of you are probably going to fall under other. So the bottom box is other, and you will check that. And you are going to be probably one of 3 options here. You're going to be a nonprofit, which means your entity is organized as a nonprofit. That is a actual federal tax classification. You are going to be a 501c3, again, a federal tax classification, or you are going to be a government. And those are the three on the other line. Those are the three options that you have: nonprofit, 501c3, or government. Again, we cannot tell you what you are, so we will have to work with your entity, your tax advisor, anyone who's handling your financial information to determine what you are. Box 4, you will leave it blank. And then when you are completing box 5, this is super important. This information needs to be the mailing address or the entity receiving the money. So if the volunteer fire department is a 501c3 and they are receiving the money, that address needs to be the mailing address. It does not need to be your physical location. And I know many times people have 2 separate addresses, so make sure when you're completing it that that is your mailing address. If you are, when you're completing this, a good resource, and we'll share this link with you later, is the USPS address lookup. This will ensure that when you complete this, that it meets the USPS standards. So if your zip code, your county, your city, it'll make sure it is the correct one according to USPS, and that is a requirement of F&A Edison, which is part of your supplier registration. So we need to make sure that that information conforms with USPS. So lines 5 and 6 will contain that information. Line 7, you will leave it blank. You will not put any information there, as well as this requester's name and the address optional. You will not put any information in that field. So I want to take just a moment. Does anyone have any questions on this first section before I go to part 1 and part 2? I see a hand. And I think the hand raised. Carrie, do you have a question? You're on mute. I still can't hear her.
Miss Carrie, there is a microphone at the top of your screen. If you'll click on it, you should be able to talk.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a W-9 that was submitted to me by our finance department.
Okay.
And in number 4, they have 5 for exempt payee code 5. Is that acceptable, or do I have to have them take that out?
No, there can be something there, just most people won't have something there.
Okay. Okay.
So for the generals, mostly there won't be anything there. We're not expecting anything.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to move on to part 1, which is your taxpayer identification number. For this, everyone here will be entering your employer identification number. So this is your federal tax ID number. Pretty straightforward, simple. Just fill in those boxes with that number. Next will be the certification part, and this is a piece that can sometimes trip people up. So the top of the form, you are able to fill it out, and you can fill it in electronically. You can type in information, etc. The one part that you cannot fill out electronically is the signature and the date. This must be completed with an ink signature. They will not accept electronic signatures at this time. So please make sure you'll need to print out the form and hand fill it out, or fill it out electronically, print it out, sign it, and scan it so that you can then reattach it. So that's a big piece that we've seen over the last couple of years. Also, the signature on it must be within the last year. So for instance, if you have a W-9 on file that was dated January of last year, we can't accept that. So make sure that your date is within the last year. And it's year to year. So like something dated 11/5/2022, we couldn't accept on 11/6. And that will apply each year. As I said, we will need a new updated version each year, so you'll want that date for subsequent years. And when you submit your W-9, the only page that is actually needed is this first page. The instructions are not required to be included with it, so that'll save you. And when you print it, you can print just that first page, so you can save some printer ink as you print it out, because the instructions are lengthy. So before I move on to requesting a supplier ID, Edison registration, anyone have any questions? Okay. So I'm going to switch over. We will be providing the link. Many times you will see in here, it will say supplier portal homepage or supplier ID, Edison vendor ID, Edison number. Those are all synonymous. And this number, your supplier ID, is necessary in order for the state to remit payment. So I'm going to walk you through how to do that, but I want to cover a few things before I do. If you are a volunteer fire department that has received awards from the VFEAT program in the past, so in the last 5 years, you will already have an established supplier ID. There are 2 ways that you can get that information. Michelle's team can assist you with locating that number, as well as if you look on the contract from your prior grant contracts, there is a location on there. I'll share my screen here in a second, where you will see that information and you can retrieve it. Share my screen again. You'll see right here, this is a governmental contract. All the contracts look the same, whether governmental or nonprofit, but right here it says Edison vendor ID, and that will actually be your supplier ID. So for those of you that have an established number, the rest of this you will not need to complete. You will not need to follow these steps and register yourself again in Edison. You have an existing ID. We just need that W-9 in order to confirm the information should you be awarded. If you have if you have applied but you were not awarded, again, Michelle's team can assist you with getting that number, because like most, like during the last cycle, we encouraged people to apply for their supplier ID, Edison vendor ID prior to any awards being issued. So there may be many of you that have it. If you are associated with a city or county government, they likely already have an existing Edison ID. So you can work with your fiscal department, your accounting group, check with them before you go and start to apply for a number, because likely a number already exists for you. I want to make sure people don't have to go through a process if they do not need to. If you have received any other grants from another state agency, so something from agriculture, something from forestry, potentially something from TEMA, if you've received those awards from the state, you likely already have a supplier ID. Again, Michelle's team can assist you with determining if one already exists for you. So now I'm going to move on to anyone who is brand new and has never applied and has never received any money from. I'm going to move into Edison, and we will be supplying a how-to document that will contain the link so you can get to all of these pages very easily. We have not sent that out yet. Everything in here is going to sort of relate to doing business with the state. So keep that in mind. Some of the verbiage is going to not be grant specific. It is just vendor specific. So once you're on Edison, you will click on Supplier Portal homepage. And it will take you to Supplier Portal homepage. And there's a lot of information, but what you're going to want to do is focus right here in the center, and it's going to be register as a supplier. And you will click on that to begin the registration. This registration is quite simple. It is actually only 5 steps. So on the first page, once you come here, you're going to do start a new registration form and click next. After that, you will enter your taxpayer ID. For everyone, that is a made-up number. So all of this information is just for demonstration purposes. Next, you're going to select, or you're going to enter your taxpayer ID, which of course is your EIN number. And then you're going to enter the supplier name. So one of the things to keep in mind, the supplier name here needs to match what is on your W-9, and it needs to be your legal name. So make sure all of those things stay in sync. Your W-9 and your supplier ID information all have to match. Okay. For the URL, there is not any information that needs to be entered. Next, it's asking you to select which type of taxpayer ID you have supplied. In all cases, this is going to be 2 because you are supplying an EIN number. So you will click the hourglass and you'll be able to select 2. Or you can type in the 2 as well. Okay. Next, you will go in and this is where once you've completed your W-9, you will print it out, sign it, and then you will need to scan it in, and then you will save that on your computer, and you will go in and you will actually attach that document. So you will click on the paper clip, and then you will click on upload. You will select choose a file. I am choosing a random file that is available. Okay. I'm going to upload that, but you'll want to make sure the naming convention does not matter. I would avoid any special characters just for simplicity. I would most likely name it the name of the fire department, W-9. Okay. Once it is attached, you will see it here in attached files. At that point, you can view it, but you can simply click return, and now your W-9 is attached. And that is the only document you will need to attach as part of this. And you can see now it says view or modify one attachment. So you can always make sure you went through all the steps, you'll see view or modify there. Okay. Next, you'll skip remittance address because that will be the same. For products or services offered, you will click on the magnifying glass and you will come down here. Everyone is going to select 12. You're going to click 12 because none of the other services match a grant. Okay. Next, it's going to ask you if any employee of this firm currently or previously employed by the state of Tennessee within the past 6 months. Because this is for a grant, you are going to select no. There are several other questions listed, but I am going to skip all of those. You are only required to complete the ones that have the asterisk, and the asterisk is quite small, but it is right here at the beginning of the description. So you will skip down. until you come to the very bottom, and where it says comments, this is where we're going to put grant. Okay. Or comment, because that, again, we selected 12, so we need to say in the comments that this is for a grant. Once you have that, scroll through and check everything out, but you will come down and click next. Okay. Now, again, this is where we're going to go back and we're going to, the address. So you are going to enter the address, and you need to make sure that the address conforms with the USPS standards. And they actually included here a link for the USPS, and you simply go there, but we actually have a link that takes you directly to, so we will include that in the materials, so you can go directly to the page where you can simply enter your information and it will quickly return what should be there. Okay. After you've entered your address, you're just going to click next. Again, make sure the address matches what is on your W-9. This is the mailing address. Okay. Once you have your address in, you will click Add Contacts. And this contact information is important so that you can receive information about the registration. And it also should, in the future, if you should need to update information, you are also creating a profile. So you will get to that. I'm going to make myself the contact. I'm going to select accounts payable. Okay. Next, you are required to create the user ID here, and the user ID will begin with TN at. So make sure that you include that. Again, on this page, you just need to complete the information where there's an asterisk. So once you've done that, click OK. Right. Now I'm listed as the primary contact. You're only required to have one contact. You can't have multiple contacts. Most people just have one. So click next. Okay. Now we're on step 5. So at this point, we are getting ready to confirm everything and actually submit it. So it asks you to confirm your email address. So I need to type my email address in here again. And this email address should be an email address where you can receive information, because this is where you will receive information related to your registration. So you'll receive the confirmation that it's been submitted. And then once it is issued, you would actually receive an email that your supplier or Edison ID has been issued, and then you can move forward with that information, inputting it into Smart Simple. Okay. So at this point, I'm actually not going to actually submit it, but I would normally click on the terms of the agreement. And once you click on it, that you agree to the terms below, you'll see that the submit button is available. So I could click submit, but I'm not going to submit this into the system. You can save for later. If you do save for later, there will be a number that will populate on the screen, and you will need to use that number to return to your registration to start or update or change anything that's in there. Once it is submitted, you are not able to make updates unless you are requested to do so by supplier maintenance. And that is who the information will be sent to. And that is a separate department within state government. So if you do submit one, you may receive an email from them. Please know it is not us. We are able to limitedly assist with the registrations. It just depends on where it's at in the process. So if you get an email from them and you don't understand something about needing to make an update, or something isn't legible, something isn't conforming to USPS, we can assist. I think, Michelle, Lisa on your team can assist with helping you navigate and make any updates that need to be made, but we cannot actually make those updates. You will have to make them in the system for yourself, but we can translate the request from the team. Supplier IDs generally take 10 business days or so to be approved. So you may not hear anything for several days after you have submitted it. But additionally, on the supplier portal page, we are going to send out a document that provides how a step-by-step directly related to submitting for purposes of the grant. But there is also a user manual on Edison that you can click on. It is lengthy and it is tailored to vendors. So make sure some of it will not apply to you because you are not a vendor. You are not selling us a good or service. You're applying for a grant. So any questions? I know Michelle have been in the chat. So if someone doesn't have an Edison ID, they probably need to start the process ASAP so they can meet the grant deadline. Michelle, do you want to speak to that? And you're on mute.
Okay, it is actually possible to register and go ahead and do your application. Then you would need to come back in and update your profile to make your profile active with that Edison ID. So it can be done as a multi-step process.
Okay. I have a supplier ID, but I do not have a password to log in. Oh, I helped you last year. You never got a password. Okay, you don't need to do anything likely inside of Edison. The Edison step is only if you do not have an existing supplier ID. If you have an existing Edison ID supplier ID and something has changed, you will need to send it to Lisa and we can request any changes, but otherwise you do not need to utilize Edison or anything if you already have an existing supplier ID.
Any other questions?
Lisa just dropped her contact information in the chat.
Okay. Zora, let me ask, since other people are probably going to share the same experience, while we were working on the W-9, my application process timed out. What do we do in that case? I've logged back in. How do we fix it?
So yes, periodically the system will time out after 5 minutes or so of inactivity. So throughout your time in the system, it's important to establish a practice of clicking save or save draft, just in order to save whatever changes you have been working on. And that way, if you do get timed out, like Michelle did, then at least you can come back into the page that you were working on and still access or still pick up from where you left off. So in this instance, we'll go ahead and click on the edit button at the top left page. This is our organization profile. And now we can pick up from where we left off.
Okay, we were on the attachments page, and you do have to submit the W-9 in the profile, and then later you will also have to submit it in the application. So go back and upload, for those of you that just completed the supplier ID, you would upload the same W-9 that you had previously. And now that you have that updated, you can certify that all your attachments are current and up to date and click Save. As I said, everything that hasn't been done will pop back up. And because I had not hit Save before, it's requiring me to go back and complete that again. You can always go back up here to the top, or it will highlight what you need here in red. It's always good to spell your name correctly. Okay, the save is complete.
And
draft.
We can scroll up to the top just for visual confirmation, and the status of our profile shows it's an active status. So for the first time, which many of you it will be, one way to, well, it's encouraged that you familiarize yourself when you're in the system, particularly around things like editing your profile information. You can always come in after you've activated your profile, as Michelle said, and update fields. You can change the address information. There are additional tabs that are displayed where if you hadn't provided your supplier ID at the beginning, you can come back in after the fact and add it in. So by clicking on the additional information tab, Michelle, that will display some additional fields that can be filled out. And then just remember again to click Save Draft so that your changes are stored to your profile. So the next thing that we are going to do now is to submit our application. And so a good and quick and easy way to get back to your homepage is to click the logo, as Michelle is about to do. And that will take you back to your landing page. This is your dashboard. This presents you with shortcuts and links to your application throughout various stages of its life. So that means, and we'll go through them step by step, but essentially that means if you start an application and you are unable to finish it today or at this point in time, you can save your application and come back to work on it at a later time, and it'll appear under the applications in progress. If you've submitted your application, it'll appear under the submitted application tile. And alternatively, if you have submitted your application and it has been reviewed by program staff and maybe a correction has been requested, it'll appear under the corrections requested tile. So these shortcuts are designed to help you easily get to the information as it's required, but will also be accompanied by email notifications if further action is required on your side. So now we're going to take a look at the available funding opportunities tile, which currently shows that there is one available. So here is, oh, go ahead.
This would list any available opportunities that you're eligible for. Later in the year, when we get to the rescue squad grants, it could potentially show both grants that you're eligible for, and you have to pay specific attention to solicitation start dates and the deadlines for when applications are due.
Additionally, on this page, there is the attachment with the DGA details, which you can click to view and download. And I believe this is also linked on the grants web page that we started from initially. So plenty of information on the program. When you're ready to proceed, go ahead and click Apply Now. Prior to starting your application, you'll be presented with these simple but effective steps on guiding you through the process. Before you continue, there is a reminder about using the Save Draft. It is a very highly recommended and suggested functionality. There's nothing like starting an application and leaving it and then not saving your changes. So definitely developing a habit there is really helpful for you. On the following page, we'll also be presented with some information about the program. Yet again, just helpful resources, an attachment to download, and then finally an acknowledgement to state that you've read all of the information, you're familiar with the requirements, and you'd like to go ahead and proceed with your application. So we'll go ahead and review all the content on this page. And when we're ready to proceed, we'll click on the I attest this application was created and written by a human. And that this application this person has a capacity to fulfill and provide the project described in the application. And once we're done, we'll click on Continue. So now you have been presented with the application information tabs. I'll turn it over to Michelle to talk through this, and we'll go through different components where you might need some more guidance on filling out the application.
Okay, this gets into the application. It's very similar to what you all did last year for those that applied with the checklist. You have to verify that your department recognition is up to date. That means that every 3-year registration that is required. We actually have some departments that their recognition is not up to date, including some that I have seen have applications in process. For your application to be valid, your 3-year registration has to be completed by November 30th. So if you have any question about whether your recognition is out of date, please contact Lisa Carter in our department, and she can tell you, or any of us can pull it up and tell you if your department is valid. You have to click that. You have to verify that you have been reporting to INFRS for 2023. You verify that your department is current with your annual reported filings to the Comptroller of the Treasury that's due in December of every year. And you review your training records to ensure that your personnel meet the minimum training requirements established by Tennessee Code. Once you have attested to all those, you click Save Draft. And you can navigate through this either using these tabs up here at the top or by the next button here. On this page, it's department statistics. Last year, for those that applied, this was broken down into 3 one-year slots. This year, we have combined it, and we want to know your total number of Series 100 structure fires that you've responded to in the last 3 years. That number can be looked up in FDTN, and if you have trouble finding it there, you can contact Kyle in our office, and he can show you how to pull it from your INFRS data. Expenditures reported in the last 3 years is also your cumulative 3-year budget.
Michelle,
yes.
is that going to be the top 100? Is that all top 100 or just structure fires?
It is anything that is in the 100 series
Okay.
of fire codes. I think it goes up to 179 off the top of my head. So it is all of those. And there is a report that you can run in INFRS that will pull that. You have to do it by year. You can't do a 3-year at one time, but it can tell you how many of those calls you had for each year. Total those, put it there. I'm just pulling random numbers. You would save your draft and move on to the next tab. Your scope of service. What this is your narrative. This is where you tell us what you need, why you need it, and how it is going to help you provide better fire protection. If you have priorities in what you're asking for, this is your chance to tell us that. You know, if you're applying for PPE, a cascade system, and a washer and dryer for your PPE, but really the thing that you most need is that washer and dryer. This is your chance to tell us that. The selection committee will evaluate this. The narrative is not scored, but any identifying characteristics, anything that would tell them what department this is redacted out of there. And the selection committee reads this narrative before they look at what you've requested and before they decide what to give each department. So this is your chance to really sell what you need, tell what you need worst, and please ask for anything that you do need. Mary Beth, do you have a question?
Actually, I want to add to what you just said. You did a great job outlining that. One of the biggest items that we have been able to, quite frankly, continue forward is really outlining to the legislature, as well as county mayors and city mayors, quite frankly, the unfunded needs that remain on the table. I don't have to tell anybody on this call tonight about the unfunded needs out there in terms of PPE on down the line. And so one of the things that Michelle was really emphasizing is that narrative portion allows you to tell us what your top priorities. And I can assure you from sitting through the selection committee process for several years now, they absolutely take that very seriously into consideration. So take some time with that narrative, but telling us what you need as a department is absolutely critical. We've been able to take it from $500,000 to the 10 million this year. So I just want to add to the group out here, and then anybody watching this in the future, is that we absolutely, from the fire marshal's office, want to help you work through this. So please reach out to us for assistance. But furthermore, please tell us what you need. This truly is a process in which the legislature has listened to us diligently over the past few years, and we are very grateful for this opportunity for the grant. So thank you, Michelle.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
this where we're going to need to list an itemized? Everything's itemized on here?
Everything will actually be itemized on the next tab in the budget, but this is your chance to tell, like I said, what your priorities are.
Okay.
You know, we want you. Last year, we had departments that came to us and said they didn't apply for everything they needed because they didn't want to take away from other departments. We need you to tell us everything that you really need.
Okay.
And this is your chance to tell us, okay, if I can only have one thing of what I'm asking for, this is the most critical. But we really need all of it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So, any other questions about the narrative?
Michelle, if I could say one thing to add to that, and I think that bringing up washer and dryer, especially with that having a more significant cost and with $10 million, we do have some previous award winners here tonight represented on this call, but I would also add to anyone, a lot of the conversations that we have had is in particular to make sure that equipment that has come through previous grant cycles is obviously is not only used, but well maintained. And so we have been talking a lot about washer and dryers. And a great example of how that narrative could be helpful to the selection committee would be describing the need for a washer and dryer at the station when it comes to previous award cycles, for example, and wanting to maintain that gear. So to Michelle's point, please, 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 in terms of that, you are going to have an itemized list. So it's kind of like Santa Claus's list. When you sit down in the lap, you're going to lead with the dollhouse or the fire truck, the cool equipment first, and what you probably need as quite frankly as a department. I've talked to a number of departments who have said, we didn't tell you everything because we quite frankly, we didn't want to beat out the neighboring departments. But I will say this, it is absolutely critical that we build a proper needs assessment across the state. So if you're even hesitant about something, please feel free to reach out to myself, Michelle, any number of folks with the program, because quite frankly, these are conversations we're more than happy to have. Michelle, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Mary Beth, I actually may need your help with this. We have a question. If I'm asking for SCBA units, where would a rapid intervention team pack fall into place for the cost breakdown? I think that would go under other as far as on our budget.
I agree with that. Yes, I do agree with that. That would go under other.
But please make sure that you describe what you need here in this narrative. It's your chance to tell your story. And we have limited this year to 1,000 words. We have some people that can say a lot with just a few words, and then we have others that do very detailed essays. So we've held it to 1,000 words.
Michelle, did you at all wanted to, and I will say this, I've talked to probably at this point, I've talked to probably 40% of the county mayors across the state, and that doesn't include the number of city mayors and state legislators that I've talked to. Michelle herself has had a number of these conversations, including with our development districts, not just our office, but I can tell you, you have a number of resources out there that are recruiting, quite frankly, folks to be able to help. And so whether it's a development district who is used to putting these together, these type of narratives, I've had a number of counties that said to me, not just the development district, but if my assistant can help put together a narrative, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We are happy to help you find someone to help write these things. To Michelle's point, you can sometimes say a whole lot in a very few words. And so if we can help you do that and ensure that you're getting across that these are the most important items to us, though we have told you we want and need all of these other things, if we can help put together those narratives that, quite frankly, Michelle, you know this firsthand, Kimberly, a number of people on this call from the state, the selection committee takes those very seriously and is well representative across all three grand divisions, and furthermore of larger, small, and mid-sized departments. So if we can help with that, please, please let us know.
Okay, the next page that we have is the budget page. On the budget, to complete it, to start doing that, you will click the plus sign and it will open a new window for you to do your budget. Always hit the save button and that will put this up here. One thing I want to show you is this gives you what the different items are and what the priority is. There is a mistake that is being corrected and should be corrected in the system within the next few days. Air compressors and fill stations will be a high priority item. PPE washer and dryer is a high priority item, and thermal imaging cameras is also a high priority item. Also, the price per unit for the SCBA spare cylinders, the air compressor fill stations, and the portable radios will be adjusted. Those got input into the system incorrectly due to an error on our part. That will be fixed within the next few days. And any department that has already completed the budget, I will send back for a correction and have them re-input their budget and save it with the updated numbers. To do this, you click on budget details and it pulls up the inventory. The top thing is a full set of turnout gear. Just to show you, you click on the plus if you're wanting to apply for that. At that point, you tell the number of items you have currently in inventory. Say you have 20. You tab over. If you are needing to replace 10 sets of turnout gear, you would put in 10 there. This is for the average age of the items to be replaced in years. How old are the ones that you're needing to be replaced? We have seen people that have asked to replace everything from 5-year-old gear to literally 40-year-old turnout gear. But please put down how old that is. So say it's 20 years old. Number of new items to be added to inventory with funding. What this is, if you have new firefighters and you need new gear that is not part of this 20 that is already in your inventory. So you now have 23 volunteers. This is where you would add that 3 new sets that you need. It totals them, your 3 and your 10, for a total of 13. We have the item prices already in the system, and it will auto-calculate the total for you. You go down the list then to the next thing you need. Say you need an SCBA spare cylinder. You click on it. That's where you say how many that you've got in stock, and you can see what I meant about the item price per unit. This will be changed to $1,200, and that will be updated. Federal grant cost share. If you have a federal AFG Safer grant that you have a local match, this is the highest priority item that we are funding. You would click here and put in what your grant is and how much your match is. Just for example. Air compressors, you can see that that is another one. This total will be replaced with 56,000. That was a big error for us. But you would go down, put in, like I said, how many you have in stock, how many you're wanting to replace, the average age, the number of new items that you need to add if you needed to do an extra one. It totals it all for you. And when you hit save, and click your X up here in the top to close this, and click Save Draft, your numbers appear down here in a budget for you to see. And you see exactly what you have applied for. And it gives you your budget total. As we said, hit Save Draft as many times as you can. That way, if something happens that you do time out, it's saved. When you've got that completed, you close that out. If you are asking for a federal cost share, you have to tell it yes. And you move to the next page. This next page is for your roster. This year we have made the roster a mandatory item. And you click to add members. You click to add a row, and you put in their names. John Smith. On this part, you put whether they are a career or a volunteer fireman. So say you have a career. Do they meet the minimum state training? Yes or no? And this is where you put in their TFACA PSID, which is their student ID number. I'm going to put in a total of 3. Okay, to be eligible for the grant, departments have to have at least 51% volunteers, which basically means you have to have one more volunteer than you have career members. If you have 21 members on your department, 11 have to be volunteer. You click Save, come up to the top and X out, and that will appear here and give you a complete roster. Okay. You move either here with your next or up here to the tab for your supporting documentation. At this, you have to upload that W-9 that we mentioned again. You can just drag it over that way, or you can click on the browse and find it yourself. If you applied for funding to match a federal grant, this is where you have to upload your federal grant award package. That email that they send you that tells you what you're awarded and what the match required is, download that entire thing into this box. Anything else that you have for supporting documentation that you want us to have, you would upload here the same way. And then you have to certify that you've attached all the required and requested documents. Organizational contacts, that is going to generally be whoever has already set up this registration. When you start to put it in, it will pull up from your application. You put the name in, you click that by signing below, you're affirming that all the information that you provided is correct. You hit Save Draft, and then you submit. You noticed I didn't upload a grant package. You have to submit that if you said you were wanting to match a federal grant. That is here under the supporting documentation. This box will only appear to those people that checked yes right here on this, our funds requested going to be used for federal grant cost share. If you said no, then on the supporting documentation page, that whole slot is gone. And then you commit, you click submit. Because on the budget,
Scope of services.
yes, because I didn't put in a scope of service, it is a narrative. It's not letting me complete it. So as long as something is in there, it will let you submit the application and tells you that your application was successful. Okay. And now it shows up as submitted. On your email account, and it may take it just a minute to apply. Anything you do in your account, you are going to receive an email from it. Now that this account is submitted or the application is submitted, you will receive an email that says, congratulations, your application has been submitted and there will be a PDF copy of your application attached. And it may take it just a minute or two to get there. But if you need to go back, you can only make corrections then once I have looked at it and sent it back and it says requires or corrections requested. If there is a change that you realize you need to make, send me an email and I can send the application back to you for changes. One thing about the system, the way it is set up, nobody at the state can make a change to your application. We can send it back for corrections, but we cannot make any changes for you. So if there's anything that you need, just send an email to the sfmo.grants@tn.gov email address, and we will get it back to you as soon as possible. And that is the grant process. Are there any questions about it?
Hey, Michelle, I think there's a couple in the chat.
Okay. Okay. What if they don't have a TFACA number? If they have been through any training, they should have a TFACA student ID number. Mary Beth, correct me if I'm wrong there.
I believe that is absolutely correct. Yes.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, Mary Beth, but I was going to say that is accurate. And if they need assistance getting their PSID, they can contact the team down at TFACA. They can contact Brittany Curley or Chelsea Lutton, and either one of those ladies would be able to assist them with that.
Okay.
Hey, Michelle, would you like, especially when we're putting out Q&A, especially for this grant, we could put that out as a specific question. And then to Kayla's point, we can put their contact information on there so that they do have availability to contact TFACA.
We can do that. What I think we might do is take all the questions that came out of tonight's webinar and do a Q&A document on those and put it on our grants webpage. And then in a couple of weeks, there is an actual time allocated for question and answers, and we will add any additional questions that come in to that frequently asked questions document with the answers. Another question is, can you drag and drop the roster and or the narrative like the W-9? You can copy and paste the narrative into the scope of services thing, but you cannot drag and drop the roster. The roster has to be input one person at a time in the different fields. Another question, what about part-time firefighters that work only a few hours as hourly employees? Are they considered career firefighters? Unless they are full-time employees that are paid as full-time firefighters, they are not considered career firefighters. And I had somebody ask about if they provided their own training instead of going through TFACA for training. If you do, on that supporting documents page, upload your training information. So, are there any other questions? I want to thank each of you for tuning in tonight and for joining us on this. This is our first time we've done this, so it's kind of new to us as well as the new system to you. If you have any questions through this whole process, feel free to email the sfmo.grants@tn.gov email address, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you, and we look forward to getting more applications.